Well, first, can we just give it up for Ivana and PPSC and all the volunteers that are here today. Annie Stevenson, who introduced me to this amazing place, which I had already been following on social, but to be connected to the actual creators of this. And then Ivana and I were speaking, and how this came about, and I will share my story and not yours, but it was weaving gold out of our pain. And being able to walk through the gauntlet that is early motherhood when you are suffering from a PPMD, which is a postpartum mood disorder, to be able to come out the other side and say, I don't want another mom to have to drown like this. So even when you are in the pool, drowning yourself, you start to dog paddle and stick your hand out to catch a hold of any other mom that you can. And then that mom holds another mom, and that mom holds another mom, and Rachel knows. CJ Baby, by the way, over there, Rachel Weiss knows. And suddenly you have a lifeboat of moms supporting each other. That is the beauty of what we're doing here and what PPSC provides for Marin. So thank you, thank you. So my name is Sarah Ezrin. I am the very proud mama of 2 boys. My friends used to always introduce themselves as having 2 energetic boys, and I didn't know what that meant. And then I had 2 energetic boys, right? It's a whole other animal. But I'm not here to talk to you about what it's like to deal with Ninjago characters, and I had a concussion recently thanks to a baseball bat to the head. Not here to talk about any of that boy-mom life. I'm here to take you back 6, honestly 7 years ago to when I first started this journey. And my husband and I, we very quickly, and I know that this is an absolute blessing, but when we pulled the goalie, yes, sorry, that's the G version of it, and we said we're gonna have a baby, we got pregnant right away, and we didn't know. We were on our honeymoon, my moods were high and low, and I already live with lifelong anxiety. I already have generalized anxiety. I'm used to having my moods up and down and all around, but I was like a person without skin. And we had a really interesting time together on that trip. And when we came back, sure enough, we had a positive pregnancy test. And what was amazing about that positive pregnancy test was that I had been ambivalent about having children up until that point. I didn't know that this was gonna be my path. My husband told me on our second date he was put on this earth to be a father. And I was like, eh. But with the right man, I knew that there was something there was more for me on the other side of that. And as we built a life together and we raised our dog together, I was like, okay, I think this is what I want, but I still wasn't sure. And then I saw the positive pregnancy test. And everything changed for me. Until we had our first doctor's appointment, and there was no baby. It was an empty sac. I had never heard, I obviously knew what a miscarriage was. I knew that loss was possible. I had multiple friends that were dealing with fertility stuff, but I'd never had a future ripped away from me in moments, and I'd never had my body lie to me in the way that it had, because the baby had stopped developing, but my body kept thinking it was pregnant. After that point, I knew it was my destiny, my fate, to be a mom, and that I had to go through the pain of that loss first in order to get the baby who's over there now and 6 years old and like so into Ninjago that I am so grateful to have. But the road there was not an easy one. Because of the loss, you are so cute. We love Spider-Man. What's your name? Oh, Dios. Leslie? Leslie. Give it up for Leslie, everybody. So from the second that I was able to get pregnant the next time, and it took us a little bit of time, it took a lot of care and a lot of effort on our part of acupuncture and all the things, I was so anxious. And I remember, and by the way, for me to say I'm anxious, like here's normal people, right? Like here's like everyday people live here. I live about here just like on a good day. I was like through the roof. Talk about this wind, I was everywhere. And that was how I started the pregnancy. So what did I do? I tried to control everything. I had a birth plan, I got a doula, I went to every single doctor's appointment. Here's the thing, Marie was talking about how there's such a discrepancy of means in this Bay Area. I had the means to be able to get that support while I was pregnant, but it was not enough. Because when I actually started to go through the birth process, and all the moms in here know, I couldn't control a single thing. And when my son came out barely breathing, and they weren't able to put him on my chest, like the golden hour that I was told was absolutely necessary for us to have a connection. And when they took him down to the NICU so I could be sewn back up for the however many hours that took, and then we really weren't together the very first night that he was on this planet, and my husband had to be the one to be with him, I had lost complete control. So what did I do as a person whose anxiety is through the roof, and as much as this wind, is I started to control the things that I could, which when you have a newborn is nothing, literally nothing. I would measure all the breastfeeding. My husband was like a stopwatch. I was like, okay, he's on, and then he's off. No, he's on again, and then he's off again. And he would have finicky eating patterns, the sleep patterns. I made myself crazy. And then the lockdowns happened. So where I may have had the means to get some support, I knew therapy was super helpful. I have been on medication before. We could have potentially had a nanny. Everything was shut down, and it was just my husband and I on an island. So again, I tried to control. And as the months went on and leaving the house became harder, and walking down our San Francisco streets felt like I was putting all of our lives at risk, and that I would just release the stroller down the hill one day, even though I was the one holding the stroller, and that I would get all dressed, or I would get him dressed, I wasn't dressed, I would get him dressed. I had so many nods from the moms, right? The baby looks fantastic, I'm like, haven't showered in 4 days. Yeah. And then I'm like, all right, we're gonna go to Starbucks. And then I get him in the car after he has like the blowout and maybe already 2 other blowouts. And then you finally get him in the car and then you get him to Starbucks, and Starbucks would be closed. I would be frozen in the parking lot, like literally unable to move. And I didn't know that I needed help. I didn't know, because all I saw on Instagram were all these influencer moms doing it perfectly, and nobody was talking about the village. So it wasn't until I was broken down in another I don't know why parking lots do it to me. I think it's big box stores, Starbucks, and parking lots, but it was a Home Depot parking lot, breaking down, or my husband's like, you have got to get support. I think you have postpartum. At the time, we thought postpartum was postpartum depression, right? That's what we all thought. And for a long time, people would say, oh, postpartum, like it was this blanket statement. I didn't know you could have postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum obsessive compulsive disorder, postpartum psychosis, that it was actually a blanket of mood disorders that so many women are suffering from and completely unaware of because there's no name for it. I didn't feel depressed. I was scared. I was frozen. I was angry. I was rageful. Postpartum rage is a thing too. But with the support of my husband and my family, I finally started to seek out other resources. And had I lived in Marin at the time, I would have been dialing in, I'm sure we would have been Zooming at the time, right, to the Postpartum Support Center. Instead, I found a psychiatrist, I got accurately diagnosed, I was placed on SSRIs. I don't know what you believe in, I know it saved my life. And then from there, I started to build a team, because we had moved to Marin by that point. And there's a lot of women in this audience right now that form the village that I wish every mom had. Because even though my son was already 9 months by the time I moved, just having a girlfriend down the street that I knew I could call, that I could talk about these wild thoughts to, who could validate, like, yeah, it's kind of crazy to think your knife's gonna fall off and land in the living room. But I have that too. To have that support, my life began to change. when I had my second son, and I'll wrap it up here, where with my first son leaving the house was, I mean, I'm shaking even recalling it to all of you. With my second, I remember coming here. I don't know if you remember Ben, but we came here. He was like days old. I was excited. My other son was running towards the geese and near the poop, and I didn't have this. Now again, remember, my normal anxiety is here, but it was nothing like the freezing, the terror that I experienced with my first. And that is because I have the support that I need. So here we are, present day, and I have a 4- and 6-year-old, and we still need that support. And I've got moms all around me. I'm looking at you, Danny, who is also an amazing Zumba instructor. I've got this beautiful guy right here. I've got all of you in this room. And can we just again give a big round of applause for Ivana and Clara and Annie and Postpartum Support Center, because that is the network that I wish I had, and that I am so grateful to know the women and men, and anybody who identifies however, that I am so grateful that we are getting these supports, these services to people through this support center. So thank you so much for letting me share. Thank you for giving me a little bit of a do-over, and thank you, Jonah, for letting me turn that incredible experience into my gold so that I get to meet people like Ivana and all of you. Thank you.